So tell me about that a little bit more about that in terms of, because the police were very much opposed to Chesa Boudin's, becoming the district attorney. Talk about that a little bit more, and talk about also what people get wrong about who is responsible, what the DA can do and what the DA cannot do.
I could do that. I think it would be for the best if I went and locked the door, because I can hear small children in the background. So give me 10 seconds here.
Keep them out. Keep them away. It's Father's Day. How dare you get to podcast?
Hi, everyone.
Open mic is already.
They're doing a recall father election over there.
This would not be the first time that they interfered. So what can Chesa Boudin do? Chesa Boudin is not Batman. Chesa Boudin cannot go out and catch people on his own and try them and put them into jail. Like you saw on Law and Order, there are two separate but equally important branches of the criminal justice system, kung. And if the police don't arrest people and make charges, the DA can't move forward. In San Francisco, the police overall arrest rate is at about 8%. For violent crime, it's at 30%. And if they're going to prioritize violent crime, it's very hard to say like that's a bad thing. But it shows that for property crime, it's at around 4%. 15 out of 16 cases are not getting an arrest. And so for all the people who say that San Francisco is soft and people are trying to target San Francisco because they know they're going to get a sweetheart deal from the DA, that is counterintuitive. Criminals don't go around thinking, oh, they're going to charge me with a wobbler and I'm going to, I could, plead out. And it's like, no, I'm not going to get caught. I'm not going to get caught. I can go to San Francisco and I'm not going to get caught. And that's the case because in San Francisco, they don't do follow-up. They don't dust for prints. The whole situation, if you've ever seen The Big Lebowski, where he asks, are you going to get these guys? Do you have any leads? And the policeman laughs at him and says, yeah, we got boys in the crime lab working on it. It's eerily similar to San Francisco, wherein, if you remember in The Big Lebowski, that the dude did indeed find the name of the person who stole his car in the test that was left in the seat. That kind of stuff happens here. They don't do follow-up. They don't do follow-up. There's no dusting for prints and all that kind of stuff like that. So, we have a lower arrest rate, they don't solve the crimes, et cetera. And when people complain about it, this is somewhat anecdotal, but it's happened again and again and again and again, where the police say, oh, don't bother making the report because the DA won't prosecute. And these are not cases of a window being broken. These are cases of assault or cases of like a crazy person with a knife, situations where you don't want people out on the street to do it again and again. So that happens. Also, there were multiple recorded instances here of police watching burglars clear out a store, police watching criminals who the witnesses says, that's him, that's the guy that assaulted the bus driver, walk away, just doing nothing. So that gets back to the earlier situation of, is there a wildcat strike going on? Is this a situation where people are just not doing their jobs? And in this case, unlike so many other jobs, when you don't do your job, you get rewarded with more money. You get rewarded with more manpower. As far as being defunded, San Francisco never defunded its police. Nobody ever defunded their police. And separate from what you said at the beginning of this show, I think it is a terrible slogan. but the fact of the matter is like have other people do this and pay them instead is a little bit like less people who don't have guns and kill people is not as snappy, right? So like in San Francisco, we are actually trying to do that, but the police have a bigger budget than they've ever had. And the notion that like we can have more police and crime will go down is given as intuitive, and people are wrapping themselves in the police, such as people used to wrap themselves in the flag. And that's the big bet here.
Talk to me about the forces beyond the police. And I know I want to talk about a little about the mayor, but beyond the police, what about the billionaires? What about the tech VCs? What about also maybe
who don't even live here?
Okay, yeah. So who are those folks who sort of put their finger on the scale, and why?
Well, I mean, it's just as if the worst people you see on Twitter are able to throw down money. And the fact that the person who was the head of the recall committee was a longtime real estate lobbyist and was able to get lots of money from real estate interests is no big surprise. So once you are able to pay people 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 bucks a signature, it's not challenging for it to get onto the ballot. And once it's on the ballot, Chesa Boudin was in big trouble because of what I mentioned before. Also, that people are angry in San Francisco. It's almost like the Fire Fest of cities. I pay this much and I'm getting this, And then it's like this guy, Chesa, who's like a very stiff and wooden presence, and wood tends to burn when it's exposed to fire. And, you know, he does not have the political suaveness that many of the other people here in San Francisco have. And he just wasn't able to carry it off. Every time something happens, it's not an unusual thing for some parolee to commit a crime and then and people get angry. But whenever you have a liberal DA, it becomes, you know, it becomes kind of like a petri dish test case of not locking everyone up and throwing away the key. So you had a case here in San Francisco where a guy who'd been repeatedly arrested on property crimes drove high on drugs and while believing a stolen car, and he killed people. And everyone said, oh, if only he'd been locked away, this wouldn't have happened. And of course that's true. But, you know, you can't know that somebody who was arrested on property crimes was going to kill people in a car. If he had fallen asleep in his apartment building while smoking a cigarette and burned it to the ground, you could have made the same claim. So, you know, we always talk about if only we'd locked these people away, they wouldn't have committed the crime they committed. Here during COVID times, you could say because he's locked away, people could have died. But nobody cares about that. Once people are locked away, nobody gives a damn about them. So it became, you know, the fact is that it was a very complicated case with lots of people at fault and, you know, very complicated interlapping systems. But that doesn't play. So it became, if we'd have locked him away, he wouldn't have committed the crime. And so that's the kind of mindset that we had here. And people are just frustrated because San Francisco doesn't work. And what's more, San Francisco is a wealthy city that it doesn't work for the people that, you know, that need it to work. But most of the wealthy people, they don't need it to work. Everything's fine for them. But during the pandemic, people needed it to work and it wasn't. And what's more, you know, the dysfunction and misery and crime is so obvious to see. There's rampant drug dealing and death and misery and homelessness and shit and filth. And that's, you know, it's just a bad look and it makes people feel terrible. Separate, you know, people don't stop and think it must be terrible to be one of those people, but that's, you know, it's taking things a step further. Now,
heaven forbid we have empathy.
Yes, but also that's not the DA's deal.
Right.
You know, all of these things are under the aegis of the mayor. And so the amazing jujitsu here was that the mayor got the district attorney. He was a human shield for 2 years, and then he was recalled largely for things that, like, you know, are under the aegis of the mayor. Homelessness, street conditions, that's under the aegis of the mayor. Crime, insofar as someone controls crime, the police department works for the mayor. These are all, you know, these are all things that are not the DA's purview. Could he have prosecuted drug dealers more heavily? Of course he could have. But the fact of the matter is, every bit of statistical evidence shows you can lock them up and throw away the key and more people come. That's what the drug war was.
Absolutely.
So,
what's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do it.